another neighbor's house was lost. The official pre-evacuation notice had come. This was all much too real. Hey there, my name is Vanessa Kaiser. I'm a ranch girl turned social worker turned business leader turned entrepreneur. I love to explore all things organization, leadership, growth, inspiration, and efficiency. There's a phrase we use a lot around here called rhythmic living, which I define as the continuous cycle of assessing what season of life we're in and how we create habits, routines, and processes that support our current season. This show is for business owners, leaders, mamas, aunties, sisters, and friends who want to grow and live inspired. Welcome to the Inspiring Heights podcast. I have every podcast planned and outlined for the fall. I like to do that at the start of a new quarter to help me get my footing for the upcoming months. This conversation that we're going to dive into today, it wasn't on the docket for the fall. Actually, it's never even been on my radar for any time, ever. But as our last week has played out, I've decided I think this is what we need to talk about today. If you've been around Inspiring Heights, you know that I am all about finding ways to make life a little easier. I have a major obsession with discovering tools and processes that bring efficiency. When I first started seeing freeze dryers pop up on the internet, I brushed them off. Too expensive, too big. And honestly, besides freeze-dried bananas, what would we even use it for? But as time went on and I seen all the amazing things that internet friends were doing with their freeze dryers, like making soup in a jar that only needs water to be a nutritious and delicious meal on a busy night, my interest was piqued. So this past December, we went all in. And I can tell you this is one purchase I have absolutely no buyer's remorse for. The freeze dryer has been an incredible way to buy in bulk, which means saving money, because whatever we can't eat before it's prime, we freeze dry. It's taken batch meal prepping to a whole new level. For example, I can buy a 20-pound bag of onions, sit down, cut them all at once, freeze dry them, and then not have to cut another onion for months. I think sometimes freeze dryers are seen as just a homesteading trend. I'll admit, I kind of thought that at first too. But as we've gotten acquainted with this incredible tool, I can honestly say this is something that almost everyone could benefit from having in their home. From batching meal prep ingredients to creating entire meals that only require water to be ready to eat, the Harvest Right freeze dryer truly can help make your life easier. If freeze drying sounds like a good solution for your busy life, head over to affiliates.harvestright.com/2639. Harvest Right offers a variety of options, so you can choose the machine that makes the most sense for you. P.S. If you've been on the fence about getting a freeze dryer, it is officially time to hop off. For the month of August, Harvest Right has made getting into a freeze dryer exponentially easier with up to $500 off a freeze dryer just for you. Just head over to affiliates.harvestright, harvestright.com/2639 to check it out. In case, that's hard to remember, there's a link for you in the show notes. On Wednesday at 2:32 p.m., my mom called. Now, I was working, writing to be more specific, so the phone calls are kind of a tough interruption. I answered the phone a little begrudgingly, sorry, Mom, thinking about all that I was hoping to get done that afternoon. She said, "Have you looked outside?" Now, if y'all aren't from the Midwest or you don't live in a rural area, you might not know what that means. But this time of year, here, it almost always means there's a fire. I hadn't looked outside. In fact, I had almost all of the curtains in the house drawn to keep the heat out. As she was telling me there's this big fire just south of the creek, I was already up and walking towards our kitchen window. The smoke was bellowing like crazy, and my heart sunk a little. She told me Dad was leaving to go fight it, so we hung up and I went and got Ben, and we looked and we watched and we wondered. I talked to Mom again a few minutes later to confirm if Ben should go with my dad or if he should stay. And my dad requested him to stay, just in case. Staying just in case meant one thing. This isn't good. I packed everything I could find in a cooler to send with my dad and my cousin-in-law, who just so happened to be visiting. We met them outside as they came and got their equipment and bid them a safe goodbye. A few minutes later, I was on the phone with my mom again, confirming the location of the fire and our plan of action for here at home. We have a big hill on our land that allows us to see for miles. We would go there and we would watch and see what we could see. In the minutes between the end of that phone call and her arrival at our house, we started to gather the stuff that was on our evacuation list. Clothes, computers, wallets, dog food and leashes, our Bibles, sentimental cookbooks, our memory boxes. The stuff we deemed important. And as I was loading up as many clothes as I could stuff in my oversized suitcase, I commented to Ben, I really hope we get to unpack this suitcase here. As we got to our lookout spot, we could see the flames and unbelievable smoke. We were in shock. And honestly, we were all trying to hold it together and keep our heads on because we knew we were going to need those. The phone was constantly dinging or ringing, neighbors both asking for and sharing information that they had. We waited anxiously to hear from my dad, and when he called, he told us of all the neighbors' houses that they were fighting to save. And our hearts dropped again. See, we aren't new to this fire season. We just watched neighbors to the south have their entire livelihoods burned up in a raging wildfire. We know its devastation. We came from the hill and we actually loaded everything into the car. We thought it best to really be ready in case the time came to leave. We then resumed our post back at the watchout for hours, watching, wondering, communicating with the neighbors, and praying. Dad got home later that evening. Honestly, time didn't even feel like it existed that day, so I don't really know how late it was. And he was feeling okay. They had several fire lines in place. And then, out of the middle of nowhere and wildly unexpected, the wind started to blow. Not breezy, fierce. The windows shook. Large tree limbs broke. Deck furniture flew across the yard and was stopped only by the fence. My dad was getting worried. My dad doesn't really ever get worried. He's calm and collected in these matters. He doesn't borrow tomorrow's trouble, but concern was written all over his face. By the time dinner was over, it had been decided. We would disc fire guards around our homes. In all the years that my dad has lived here, which has been his entire life, he's never had to do that. It was really at that moment, and I still get teary talking about it, as I watched my dad and my husband leave, the tractor lights turn on, and the ground getting turned up, I really wanted to cry. The sky was lit bright orange, and the smoke was continuing to bellow. The updates coming in were that every single fire line had been jumped due to the high and erratic winds. Another neighbor's house was lost. The official pre-evacuation notice had come. This was all much too real. We got to bed around 12:30, 1 o'clock that morning, and of course, sleep didn't really come that easily. Around 4, we heard rain on the roof, and we both took a big sigh of relief and drifted off for a couple of hours. The next morning, things looked a little better in the morning light. In fact, every morning, forward, things looked better in the morning light. The coolness of the night combined with the dew, or was the case that specific morning, a few raindrops, it all helped. Ben and I first went to the lookout to see what we could see, and then we wandered a little further down on the property and found that the firefighters had built a fire guard on the creek pasture, the entire length of the pasture and well onto the neighbors on either side. Later that day, my mom called again, frantic. "We have to go." Ben and I both assumed that meant that our time to evacuate had come, but thankfully that's not what she meant. They were planning to start a backburn from the fire guard on a creek pasture to the fire on the ridge, and we had to get the cows out, and we had to do it right now. We moved as fast as was, in the words of my dad, reasonable. I have never prayed so hard that the cows would trail well, and I have also never had such a smooth cow moving process. They came and we moved. They were safe and we were safe. We waited and we watched and we wondered. And the backburn never came. The next day, we kept heading to our lookout spot every few hours, assessing where the fire was, checking to make sure it hadn't come over the ridge. That afternoon, I told Ben I was going to head back up as the smoke had increased. And as I stepped out the door, I seen not one, not two, but 4 choppers in the air, dropping water. 4 is a lot. So I called back down and I asked him to come along. And so we sat on our spot and we watched as they brought load after load after load of water, and they dropped it in the same spot. See, in the timber, it's hard to fight fire. It's hard to get there on foot because of the rugged terrain. And even if you can, the timber is like gas. One gust of wind and it just flies. Air support is such a huge help when it comes to fighting fire in the timber. The next day, towards the end of the day, we talked with the helicopter pilot while he was fueling his plane just down the road in a field. He said they'd made really good progress on the hotspot that day. And that night, Saturday, the pre-evacuation notice was officially rescinded. We took a drive when the chaos had settled down a bit. The amount of black ground is devastating. The places where the fire burned literally to the doorstep, but they were able to save the house. And then other places where they couldn't, it just took your breath away. And you feel and hold this deep sorrow and what feels like incredibly selfish relief that our house is still standing. I'm writing this podcast on Monday, 2 days after, and I will tell you, we are still running up to our lookout spot often. And a lot of what we packed, it's still in the car. The hotspot on this fire is still in our neck of the woods. We're probably fine. All is probably well. But after the past few days, we will continue to play it safe for a bit. Not a lot of time has passed, right? It's all very fresh. The trees still catch fire every afternoon. The helicopters are still flying over our house every 15 minutes. And part of me thought, maybe I should wait to share this with you when it wasn't quite so raw. But then I thought, actually, there's no better time than now when it's still fresh. Whenever we experience something as stressful as this situation has been, if we will take time to pause and reflect, there's usually some pretty good takeaways. Things that, since we did have to endure it, we might as well learn from it. Here's mine. Having an evacuation checklist that anyone who lives with you has on their phone is wildly helpful in the midst of a crisis situation. A couple months ago, when fire season was really picking up, Ben and I sat down and we created an evacuation checklist. Things we would take from our home if we had 10 minutes, 1 hour, or several hours to leave. We both store this list on the Notes app on our phone. That way, if something were to have happened, we both knew what our mission was to get out of here in a hurry. Now, when we made that list, we never expected to have to use it. But as we were working to get things packed up and in the car, I was really thankful we had it. When our minds are in crisis mode, it's hard to think. It's hard to think about what you should be putting in your car when you want to know where the fire is right now. Deciding in advance what is important is a load off in a really critical moment. Number 2, adrenaline is an energy source that keeps us moving for a long time. As such, we need to remember to sleep when we can. Like I said, on Wednesday, as we were moving and waiting and wandering and pacing and deep breathing and talking to neighbors and building fire lines and standing watch, time didn't really exist. Is it 6 p.m. or is it midnight? Who can tell? Adrenaline does that to us. It's our body's natural way of responding to crisis in a direct attempt to keep us alive. And while adrenaline can hold us on our feet for a while, it's not intended as an exchange for sleep. Obviously, different crisis situations will warrant different abilities and opportunities for the much-needed sleep. But in the span of a crisis situation, just like we say to new mothers, it's important to try and catch some sleep when you are safe to do so. Number 3, the pockets of calm can be deceiving. On Thursday morning, we woke up to a much calmer horizon. When we went up on the hill to look out, things seemed better, substantially better than the night before. This may seem silly, but I had to work hard. In fact, Ben and I talked about it, to not let our minds slip into, phew, okay, this is over now. It wasn't over. It's still not over. And while I am thankful for these moments where life feels like it's going to be okay, it's important to keep a grasp on the reality of the situation so that your decisions can match reality versus emotions. Speaking of feelings, here's the next thing. Emotional dysregulation is real in a crisis. Hence the prompt we get from so many people around us to stay calm. Crisis rattles us. Even the calmest of people can get excited when their life or livelihood is at imminent risk. I wish I could tell you that I had figured out the perfect method for staying calm through all of this. Since I don't lie, I might as well not start now. Here's what I observed, though, both in myself and in others. It's hard to think and communicate clearly when we're in the midst of emotional dysregulation. We know this. We know this when we aren't in crisis, but we have to remember it when we are. I'm not sure that there is a way to truly stay calm in the midst of all of it. But if we can hold on to the truth that we probably aren't making good decisions when we're emotionally dysregulated, it might help us to stay a little calmer or to tap someone else in for the communicating and decision-making until we can get our balance again. And finally, it's okay to ask questions. I've always been a question asker, curious about how things work and why we do them. I think sometimes, though, in the midst of high-stress situations, I can tend to back away from all my insistent questioning, mainly, I suppose, because I don't want to bother anybody, especially the people working so hard, in this case, to get the fires out. But on day 2, when Dad called and alerted us we needed to quickly come and trail the cows out of the pasture before they started the back burn, I realized something. He only had that information because he asked. In crisis, people don't have time to have a lot of conversations about this or that and the other thing. If you ask, they'll often answer. But if you don't, you're probably just not going to know. That's how it worked with the firefighters. And honestly, that's how it even worked with us, because our mind and focus was on the task and situation at hand. Friends, crisis is hard. And it's hard for a while. It doesn't just go away the moment that imminent risk or danger passes. If you find yourself in the midst of crisis, be gracious with yourself and reach out for the help and support of others. If you know someone in crisis, Be patient and available for them. Try to support how you can and be cautious not to be too demanding of them. Remember, they have a lot going on and they have to focus on what they can. Crisis does funny things to our brains. Deep breaths, one step at a time. I would be remiss if I didn't end this episode with the biggest and sincerest thank you to the local ranchers, the volunteer fire departments, the government agencies, and the power company that fought day and night to save homes, cattle, and pasture. Thank you for risking your life for all of us. Your sacrifice is so wildly appreciated.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Do you have questions, comments, or insights on today's content? I would love to hear from you. You can DM me on Facebook or Instagram, or head over to our website, inspiringheights.org, and click on the Contact Us form. I will link all those locations here in the show notes. P.S. If you haven't already, I would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a quick review of the podcast. This helps get our content in the hands of new listeners. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and follow us on social media for rhythmic doses of inspiration. All right, friends, take a deep breath and be inspired where your feet are. Bye for now.